we might be willing to trade back a little bit. Who's willing to trade up here for something important? And honestly, I think it's going to be the Vikings. I think the Vikings trade into the top 5. I think that last week they went out, and I don't know how quiet I could say this was, but they kind of got some more. They went out and got some more equity. And they were like, hey, who wants to trade us another first round pick? Because we all know that if you're trying to trade into the top 5, you better be offering 2 first rounds.
Yeah.
Like, we all know they're coming in, and we all know why. And that's what I think is important. Jay's not here to defend himself, so I'm not going to get this fight started. I don't think there is a problem over at the Minnesota Vikings. I don't think Kwesi and KOC are at all on different pages. I think they went together and were like, this is what we offer Kirk. If he says no, it's fine. We move on. He said no, and they're like, great, this is business. Move on. Now they're like, okay, we got to trade into the top 5, which is not a hard thing to do now that they have 2 first rounders. You might have to offer a 3rd for next year. But at the same time, this is you selling the farm, like we talked about a couple of weeks ago, to go up and prove that you get your guy that you want. And you got to know that you're going up there for a guy that you want. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you go into the 5, you better be 100% sure you know what you're doing. Like, hey, well, this is our guy. And you have to, that's all you have to say. Is everybody just has to be on the same page. Hey, this is our guy, and this is why. Boom, done.
And speaking of Jay not being able to defend himself, all right, here. So my next mic is Kwesi. Let's stay at this. It's funny because we all have Vikings ties. You played for the Vikings. Jay played for the Vikings. I host a Vikings podcast, Purple Daily. You're on that podcast, but this is not a Vikings podcast. This is a National Football League podcast. It's a football.
They're just doing a lot of things right now. They're irrelevant to what's going on. They're going to be a massive player in this draft.
They are, dude. They're kind of the central figure of all of this. Like, they were the central figure in free agency. Are they going to bring Kirk back? Are they not? And now they're kind of the central figure that everyone's looking. Are they going to be the one that moves up to 3 to 5? And I'll come back to the Jeremiah not being able to defend himself thing in a second. But on Kwesi, here's why he's my mic. He has had a wild week, dude. It's been 8 days, and in those 8 days, he finally drew a line in the sand on Kirk Cousins, the greatest negotiator in the history of organized team professional sports, at least in North America. Can't speak for the English Premier League. I'm sure there's some great negotiators with it.
That shit's insane over there. $1 billion.
There's no salary caps over there. It's wild. He says goodbye to Danielle Hunter, too.
That was
29-year-old, led the NFL in TFLs. What do you have? 14 and a half, 15 sacks last year.
15, yeah.
And not even really a peep in terms of, like, with Kirk for a month, all you heard was 2 sides are talking. They're talking. Like, I think, like, as far as we can tell, they just said, Danielle, good luck in your future endeavors. We've got a different plan here. He says hello to 3 good young defensive players. Jonathan Grenard comes in from Houston. Basically, Danielle Hunter and Jonathan Grenard swap situations, right? Mm-hmm. You bring in Andrew Van Ginkel, really good edge rusher, jack of all trades in Miami. Blake Cashman, former Golden Gopher.
Hell yeah, baby.
Yep. Coming back home. They say hello to Aaron Jones to upgrade their running back situation. Sam Darnold, kind of controversial. A lot of people looking at him as, he was a top 10 pick bust.
We're going to go back to that. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Keep going.
It's interesting in that Kyle Shanahan liked him enough to bring him in last year, and now Kevin O'Connell, the Shanahan-McVay system quarterback, seem to like him.
Yeah.
And then they trade for the extra first-round pick to get the extra ammunition. Kwesi has been cooking, dude, for the last week here. Yeah. And I think on the inner turmoil report that you're talking about, that Mike Florio put it out, that there's a schism, there's a disagreement in the Vikings practice facility in there. I do think Kevin O'Connell wanted Kirk Cousins back. I think Kwesi's been pretty 50-50 on this for like maybe the last year and a half. He's never really come out and said, we kneel at the gospel of Kirk Cousins. Like, he's always kind of said, if the price works, if the contract works, we'd like him back. We think we can win with him, but whatever. But I think even if there was a little bit of a rift and Kevin O'Connell was devastated when he goes and signs with the Falcons, I think 48 hours later, you take a deep breath, you go look at the 5 or 6 quarterbacks available in the first couple rounds. You're a quarterback guy. You got Josh McCown in here. He coached Drake May in high school. Yep. Dude, they're sending the entire cavalry to go watch JJ McCarthy do a private workout next week. So I think they're excited inside that building, and I think they've got some really good infrastructure for a young quarterback to come in here. And there's a lot of people painting this as like it's doom and gloom for the Vikings now. They lost Kirk Cousins. I think the future is as bright as it's been in a long time over there for the Vikings.
Absolutely. Dude, I agree with you 100%. Now, I will say this to Kwesi. At some point, we have to shore up this contract with JJ. Like, give him the 35. It's clearly what he wants. He wants to be the highest paid non-quarterback dude, whatever you want. I'll pay
so
you
do
it.
that. You don't
There's no question, because he is the best in the league right now at getting it done. Contested catches, routes running, ability to just turn on the jets and gone. Fuck out of here, dude. Pay that dude. That's the only issue I have right now. I love it. You drew a line in the sand, and people don't get this, but there's a massive business behind that curtain. And as soon as you go behind the curtain, it's real people writing real checks, getting audited every year going, yeah, we just can't afford that. Like, love you, would do anything for you. Just can't write that fucking check right now because we're writing one to JJ that's even bigger than yours. Like, don't know what you're trying to tell us right now. Like, just can't pay for both you guys. We love you. We just can't do it. And that's why when you talk about this, you're like, okay, you did that. I'm really proud of you for doing that. You're right. The fan base was upset, but you had to do what you had to do. Now you turn around and go, JJ, here's 35. I know you want to be the highest non-paid quarterback. Here's your $35 million a year. And then you turn around and you get into the top 5 and you go, we know who we want. Boom. Shut it down. Now this is going to drive Jay nuts because it might be JJ McCarthy.
Dude, and it's likely to be JJ McCarthy.
I know when you talk about the first, because the first 3 people are not trading out. The first 3 people are like, nope, we're dead set on quarterbacks too. We're going all in.
I think you could get the Patriots out of that spot.
I don't think you could.
It'd have to be a Godfather offer, though. It would have to be your 2 first-round picks and probably your 2025 first-round pick, maybe something else.
I don't even think they do that. New coach, they're not going to be like, hey, Gerard, we're going to let you come in and fail miserably the first year. They're going to be like, dude, we'll give you whatever you want. They've already went out and spent, like the 3rd most in free agency. We've talked about this. When you go from like a team that doesn't spend money for years and years and years, and eventually they come in with a new regime, they're like, blow the doors off it. Just go crazy. And at the same time, I don't see them being like, yeah, sure, we'll trade out and lose up on one of the top quarterbacks to suck this year and wait till next year. Like, the Patriot fans won't put up with that shit. The owner won't put up with it. They're probably, the first 3 are probably like, we're not moving. But 4, you could get 4 to move a little bit. But then again, how dead set are they on getting Marvin Harris? I think it's 5 too.
I think it's your guy, man. I think it's Jim, because you could. I think it is too. You can. There's so many things. The Chargers need a bunch of stuff, man. The Chargers need weapons, but they could also use an offensive lineman. So you move back from 5 to 11. If you're the Vikings, I don't know. I think it's to go from 11 to 5, and it depends on if there's 3 other teams creating a bidding war market. It's the 11. It's the 23. By the way, the Vikings, based on losing Kirk Cousins and Danielle Hunter, it looks like the comp pick formula for 2025 is giving the Vikings 2 additional 3rd-round picks. So the Vikings have, in 2025, the Vikings have a 1st and 3/3 if they get the 2 third-round comp picks.
Right.
They could say, all right, we'll give you Chargers. We'll give you the 11, the 23, and we'll give you 2 third-round picks in 2025. And you'd still have in 2025, you'd have a 1st and a 3rd if you're the Vikings, and JJ McCarthy, which again, Jay's head's going to explode. I think Jay's wrong, and I'm excited to fight him on JJ McCarthy when he comes back.
Well, the problem is this. I just looked at the order. 5 to 11 is a big drop, dude. And if you're going for a receiver, you're going to be like, hey, that could be the difference between receiver number 1 and receiver number 3. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I know. I think there's a better chance you get. I don't know, man. That's why this whole thing got just shaken up.
If the Cardinals take Marvin Harrison Jr., then you're the Chargers and you really want a wide receiver. You have to figure out, can you get Neighbors or a Dunze at 11? Or it's also a deep wide receiver class.
It is.
Like, there's a good second tier of wide receivers. Would it be better? Because, dude, they've been in cap hell. They
have.
I think it's going to take like 2 or 3 years of patience for the Chargers to sort of climb back up, especially in that division. But there's other things they could go for. It's super interesting though, because if you're the Vikings, you don't make that first trade unless you have a second trade sort of in your back pocket, right?
200%. You're not
Don't
trading.
You probably talk to Jim and the Chargers front office first before you make that first trade? Hey, if we do this, is that enough? If we need to sit there and talk to you on draft day,
I think what you do is you for sure call the Chargers and go, hey, what's it going to take to move off of 5? And if they're like, hey, 2 this year and 1 next year, and you're like, done.
Yeah.
But you get the quarterback you want. And if it's JJ McCarthy, I swear to God, Jay's going to lose his shit.
He better get in line, man. Die. He better fall in line.
I'm going to die. And it's funny, though, because his whole thing, and I agree with this, is here's a quarterback who had 2 NFL running backs with him his senior year. So it's kind of like, dude, you've been given a lot. What's going to happen when you don't have that force behind you, or you don't have a badass offensive line?
CJ Stroud played.
I agree.
Joe Burrow played on the greatest offense in college football history.
I agree. Dude, I'm just saying, it's just the way that sometimes people see it. I see it too sometimes. You get a little nervous. You're like, this guy's potential is through the roof. And you're like, boy, I've been burned on that word before. I've been burned a lot. And that just
what does it mean for you? Your guy, Jim Harbaugh, came out, and I get that he's going to pump the tires of his college players.
And that's where you have to know that. He might just be pumping the tires, and we don't.
He could have pumped. There's 2 ways to pump a guy's tires. Oh, love that guy. Yep, he's gonna be an asset to any team that there's that level of praise.
Right.
But then there's the level he went to, which is he didn't have to say it like this. He said a month and a half ago, by the time this process is over, and when he said this, JJ McCarthy was being mocked by the mock draft community, the Mel Kipers of the world, all these, right? As like a late first, early second round pick. So the world thought that of JJ McCarthy. And Jim Harbaugh comes in and says, by the end of this process, he will be regarded as the number 1 quarterback in this class. Now, Caleb Williams is probably going to go number 1, so he's not going to be 100% right on that. But, dude, he's going to be a top 5 pick, almost certainly.
He jumped up big time.
What does it mean that you know Jim better than anyone? Like, does Jim's opinion of JJ McCarthy matter to you? Does it sway you at all on him?
Are you kidding me? I just don't believe what I hear in the media. If I were to call Jim and Jim were like, hey, man, this dude is literally the 3rd best quarterback in this draft, I'd be like, I'd take your word for it 100%. I know how Jim is with quarterbacks, and I know how good he is with them too. He's like this little whisperer, gives them this confidence of like, yeah, who cares what people are thinking? All you need to know, kiddo, is what I'm thinking. And what I'm thinking is you're a rock star. And you're kind of like, they just, okay, you're right, I am. But if Jim called me and was like, hey, dude, this dude is legit number 3, trust me, I'd be like, I got you 100%. It's just sometimes you have to wait and see. And I think it's one of those things. It's kind of like the Vikings. They're so scared to get burned again on a top pick on a quarterback that they're like, we just don't know. It's the same thing with us. We're all like, yeah, this guy could be great, or he could need a lot of weapons around him to be great. Which one is it? And that's a massive difference, right? Like that's a huge difference in this league. Can a guy like Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, can they do it by themselves and be like, just get me whoever out there, listen, run the stick, run it tight? Or do you need someone who's the exact opposite, that you need to put a ton of pieces and parts around and be like, hey, now you go out and thrive, right? Like,
but dude, the beauty of that, you're 100% right. But the beauty of what you just said is you don't really have to make a decision on if he's the franchise carrier quarterback for like 5 years. Because to me, that's a decision you have. That's a decision you make when it's time to pay a guy $50 or $60 million or whatever it's going to cost in 5 years. Any quarterback that the Vikings draft right now is going to have the best infrastructure of any team looking for a quarterback. Like if you took all the teams looking to draft a quarterback this year, none of them have the left tackle, right tackle combo that the Vikings have. Dude, you have one of the best left tackles in the league protecting.
I didn't know we were talking about O-lines. I thought we were talking about pieces around us because I'm like, man, Chicago really did do. Well, Chicago did go do some things now. They
agreed.
Swift. They have DJ Moore. They have Keenan Allen, Cole Kmet. They went out and got Gerald Everett. Dude, they went out and took care of some shit. They were like, we're sick of being the laughing stock of this division. And that's why, like, I get what they're doing. And plus they have a ton of money. They're like, hey, we got the money to do it. Let's go have fun. And we have the first pick. We're gonna have a rookie quarterback. This is gonna be great. But it's just the whole ability of, especially for players that have been behind the curtain. Sometimes you see guys and you're like, man, this guy looks great. And then we draft him and you're like, this guy fucking sucks. Why? Because it was all just a big show. How good could he be? Some idiot on TV like, this guy's going to be great. Dumbass, you don't fucking know. You don't even know what's going on behind the scenes. I swear to God, I saw so many things about people. We drafted them, and it was like, boy, they lied. They had no idea, did they? They have no
Great
fucking
agent.
clue. That's exactly why we get nervous sometimes. I get it if you're the guy that's running around and slinging it 400 yards, putting up 500 yards a game. I get that. You can do some things. You are talented. But when all of a sudden people are like, yeah, but this guy had 2 NFL running backs behind him, one of the stoutest O-lines. Like, what happens when he goes somewhere that doesn't have that? What happens when he goes somewhere that's the complete opposite of that? Is he going to thrive? And my thing would be, you make your opinion on a franchise quarterback when you draft him in the top 5. Because when it doesn't go right, you're Chicago, and you're quickly trying to backpedal out and go, it just wasn't our guy. By the way, a month ago, everybody on that team was like, this is our guy. The president, the GM, like, that's why it's like, if you're making that decision to jump into the top 5 to go for somebody, you've nailed him as your franchise. Where this is what we're going to build it around. This guy right here, everybody has to be all in. That's why it's a big decision. And that is one of the ones.
You're right. I agree. And by the way, on the infrastructure, the Bears are in a better spot than they were a few years ago.
I see what you're saying. The Vikings are great too, right?
But the last thing I'll say, and then we'll get to some dumb football questions here. We also have some film breakdowns we're going to dive into on the YouTube channel this week. So definitely keep your eye on the O-Line Committee YouTube channel. But I feel like it's being painted as, for the Vikings and for other teams, but specifically for the Vikings, that, boy, it was a risk to move off Cousins and go into the unknown of drafting someone, just like it's a risk now. Oh my gosh, if you draft McCarthy higher up, then maybe he should, or Drake May could be. It's all being painted as risk. To me, the risk is sitting on a guy like Kirk Cousins at $40 or $45 million a year, knowing that you cannot win a Super Bowl constructing your roster around him, and not moving off of it. Like, that would have been, the risk would have been not doing what they're doing. Right now, of course, there's risk, and everyone wants certainty, Booney, in football. Everyone wants, it's not a sure thing. Nothing's a sure thing. People only talk about quarterbacks that way. Boy, look at the bust rate for quarterbacks. Well, okay, let's play the same game for left tackles that are drafted. For wide receivers, you want me to show you a list of?
Yeah, it would all.
You want me to show you a list of first-round wide receivers? Oh, it's a little safer to draft.
Scrutiny. We agree. They don't get the scrutiny that these young players get, especially as a first round, especially in the top 5. Like, think about it. If Trey Lance didn't work out and Brock Purdy didn't work out, there'd be some really pissed off people trading into number 3 to get Trey Lance, and then it completely failed. They just had a safety net in Brock Purdy, and that's why it's like, that's a risky thing to do, but it's the same. I agree with you. We're all saying the same thing. I'm just saying that, to Jay's point, that was his biggest point, was the potential on this kid is different for me because of what the weapons that he had in college and the ability of their offense to just run the shit out of the ball. And it's not to say that there's not 10 NFL teams right now that are built like that, right? Like the Vikings used to be built like that with Dalvin. We're going to run this shit out of the ball, and when you can't handle this, we're going to play action. Or we're going to be able to...
It's what the Chargers want to do.
Right. It's what a lot of people want to do. That's why it's kind of like, yeah, I could see this kid being great, but that's where some people go, but what if he doesn't get his running backs? What if he doesn't get the O-line he has? Like,
that's why maybe the Chargers need to trade Justin Herbert to the Vikings, and then they can take JJ McCarthy 5th overall.
What if he actually, like, said something like crazy like that, outlandish, and then followed through with it with an idea like that? Like, guys, let's move off Justin and let's get JJ.
Do you think that conversation has come up behind the scenes?
No. No. Are you out of your fucking mind, Mackey? Justin Herbert, we're going to move on Justin.
I'm just saying.